My name is Jeremy Fegert, and I work in learning and development for Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly is an accounting firm. We have about 4,000 employees. We have an office stay here in State College. We have offices kind of from Minneapolis, major cities over to New York City, down as far as DC, Virginia, kind of that corridor. We've made some expansions into Texas and some other places, so we are certainly a growing firm. And just making sure, I'm guessing, oh, please share my video. Oh, that's to Sherry, sorry. Okay, Sherry's taking care of all of the Q&A. If you have a Q&A or you have a question, please pop it into the top bar, and Sherry will kind of share that with me, and we'll try to make this as a positive experience for you as possible. So that's me, a little bit of my background. I used to do a lot of experiential education, a lot of team building, conflict resolution type work. My previous job worked in social services, so working and helping kids kind of learn coping and developmental skills, one of them being emotional intelligence. Now I kind of plan and deliver large-scale training events, and then I also do a lot of teaching around the areas of emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, positive team development, all of those good things. So I do a little bit of everything. You know, you can visit our website if you have questions. Certainly share my email, and you can connect with me if you have other questions about anything we do. As I said, today we're going to start by understanding emotional intelligence and what it is and how it can be useful in your career as a professional. You're going to talk about why it's important. It's important because it helps you better understand yourself. It's a good self-reflection point. It helps you better understand other people. I always use the start with the analogy of you've all been, introduced to group projects, right? And you can raise your hand. How many of you enjoy group projects? No hands raised, right? No hands. No one's advocating for group projects. That's because group dynamics are difficult. And navigating group dynamics are difficult because it involves a lot of emotional intelligence work, involves a lot of emotional intelligence skill. And so learning that now, part of putting you into group projects is to hone and develop that skill now before you get into the workplace. Improves your ability to lead others. And finally, just there's no relationship between IQ and EQ. For a long time, was advocated like one or the other, and there's really no correlation between the two. What it's not, what I want to make sure that we're talking about is it's not about being nice all the time. I think initially when people hear the word, well, you're an emotionally intelligent person, it is equated with, it means you're nice, or it means you're always accommodating, you're always give in to the other person, things like that. And that's not what it is. It's not about openly sharing all your feelings with everyone, right? It's not about holding hands and singing songs and all of that stuff. Now, certainly having a positive mental kind of focus and being optimistic is a, kind of an ancillary trait that can be helpful, but it's not what it's about. And it's not about a once in a while type of thing. You can't turn it on and off. You can't say, okay, I'm going to choose to be emotionally intelligent now. I'm going to choose to be an emotional dum-dum for this. It's something that you kind of continue to build over time, and it becomes developed as kind of an autonomous and kind of in the background skill. Okay? It's a different way of being smart. It's a strong factor in determining your success as a leader. When you get into the workforce, when you get into the work world, you're going to learn a lot of technical skills to be good at your jobs. As business students, you're going to learn, from my perspective, I work with a lot of accountants, right? So tax accounting, great at having the technical tax skill to understand tax code and apply it appropriately to your clients and to your business partners. That's a good technical base. But as you progress through the profession, as you progress in your career, you're going to do less of that stuff. Right? And we kind of talk about it in terms of a T. You build this technical skill upwards, and then when you're promoted to being a manager, then all of those other skills come into play. And emotional intelligence is one of those core skills that as you learn to kind of become a good manager and manage others and work with others that is going to be very important. And it's broader than interpersonal skills. Okay? Take just a couple seconds to look at a definition, making sure that we all are understanding of what I'm talking about. It's your capacity to recognize your own feelings and those of others, the ability to motivate yourself, and the ability to manage the emotions well in yourselves and in your relationships. So it's not just about you. It's not just about emotional regulation in you, which is an important piece, right? That's one of the 4 quadrants, and we'll get into that. But it's about being able to look outside and manage, recognize and manage others kind of from a relationship perspective successfully. Okay? All right. Next. Oh. The whole reason we're here, right? So why should you care? Why is this important? Why is this being offered at SMEAL? Because it's the single biggest predictor of performance in the workplace and the strong driver of leadership and personal excellence. I could share story after story after story with you with folks within my firm that have the technical expertise, are super smart individuals, are super good at their job, but they're never going to be a partner. They're never going to be a leader within our firm because they don't understand how to do this, how to manage their own emotions, how to manage their emotional reactions, and how to effectively manage relationships with other people. The second reason it's important we're not going to take an assessment today, but if you take an assessment, right, and you look at that across the board, on average, every point that you increase in your emotional intelligence score adds about $1,300 to your annual salary. There's a real financial implication for you getting this right. But hopefully the good part is you're hearing this message now before you get into the work world. And so that you're working on developing this skill, right, and understanding this skill, now before you get out there and it does become a detriment or potentially a roadblock to your career development, okay? If at any point anyone has a question, I will tell you, you can unmute and ask me questions. I don't need this to be a one-way thing, so you can unmute whatever you need to do and ask a question. Do we have any questions so far? I'm going to put you on the spot in a couple of seconds, or in a couple minutes. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, we really boil it down to these 4 skills, okay? First is when we talk about the top level of personal competence, right? When we're looking at personal competence, self-awareness, and I'll be honest, this is something that grows with time and experience, right? But I think about self-awareness is a very interesting thing as it relates to how emotionally intelligent are you. What this really kind of boils down to is, are you aware of how you're feeling emotionally? And are you aware of when emotions are coming on, right? And we'll kind of further dive into that a little bit. The second personal competence is then self-management. Once you know what that emotion is, once you know how you're feeling, right, are you able to manage that productively? So, we can all think about ways that people either productively or unproductively manage their emotions, right? So, quite frankly, hitting someone else in the face when you're angry is managing your emotion, but it's an unproductive way to manage that, right? That gets you fired. Productively managing your anger and channeling that in a way that where you're using your voice, you're using your negotiation skills and all those other things. The more that you learn how to manage that emotion productively, the better off you're going to be. We look at social competence. We look at social awareness. Are you able to pick up on the subtle and maybe not so subtle cues of the folks around you? I'm sure that you can all picture someone in your head. Maybe it's you who walks around socially unaware, like unaware about how people are feeling, how others are kind of projecting to the world. People who walk into situations and maybe say an inappropriate thing or misjudge the tone of a group. That's that social awareness. Then when you get to the management of that is, now I know how somebody feels. Do I manage that relationship in an effective way? So I'll share an example from way early in my my adult life and career. But I was walking into work one time, and one of our colleagues was kind of having a moment. She was crying, and there were some people helping her. There were some people talking to her, right? So my social awareness was, this person is crying. This, I can understand and recognize the situation, right? But from a relationship management standpoint, I had a lot of things going on that day, and I just was not in a place where I was able to then do anything to manage that relationship, help out that other person, or even acknowledge how that other person was feeling. And I walked straight past. I'll tell you that is not an effective way to manage your relationships. I'm sure, you may have people in your life to do that, but that was certainly a miss on my part, right? All right. So you guys are experts in being able to recognize low emotional intelligence. Okay, I'm gonna scroll. How many of you watch some sort of trashy reality television show? And it goes across the board. Jersey Shore, so raise your hand. Jersey Shore, Real Housewives, Below Deck, Road Rules, anything. So go ahead and raise your hand. It's a self-identifying. Yep. If you watch trash, that's okay. Then you're an expert, right? So when I think about reality television, I'm sure we can all think about a famous or our favorite moment of low emotional intelligence, either self-management or self-awareness, or ability to recognize in others, and ability to manage relationships. My favorite, my wife, she doesn't force me. This is not a forcing. I watch willingly. We watch the Kardashians, and I often flip back and forth of who my least favorite Kardashian is. None of them are my favorite. They're all my least favorite, but it flips on who's my least favorite. And often where I value or put my blame for least favorite Kardashian is on their inability to be socially aware and manage other relationships. They often say or do things that are very, what we would say in general, right, tone deaf. Or they have a propensity for saying things that are sometimes tone deaf. I'll share Kim Kardashian this week. I don't know if you follow this stuff, but Kim Kardashian this week, right? So Taylor Swift, will give you the quick update, right? Taylor Swift was vindicated. Phone call came out that she didn't agree to any of this stuff, and Kim's reaction was, instead of just apologizing for being a jerk or doing that, she then tried to turn it to well, we have more important problems. With all the crisis that's going on in the world, we shouldn't really be worrying about this. And it's I get it, but you kind of ruined this other person's world for 4 years. Maybe you should have some empathy. Maybe you should have some acknowledgement of your own behavior and how you manage that relationship. And she swung and missed again, right? All right. Moving on. That's all we're going to talk. That's enough. But think about those times. Those are usually your favorite times. When Snooki goes crazy, when Ronnie goes crazy on Jersey Shore. Yeah, right? Anything that Mike the Situation does is basically a low emotional intelligence move, right? When we then get to understanding emotion and why it's so difficult, we look at just a quick examination of emotions. Right, and they all derive from four kind of core feelings, or five core feelings, right? Some level of happiness, some level of sadness, some level of anger, fear, and shame, right? So I think it's first to be aware and to start to understand this is to understand these five emotions. And I say that because when we're going to do a little exercise in a minute, and we'll talk about why it's important to understand and be able to harness at least categorizing these five emotions, okay? Now for my favorite part of this entire thing. So I used to do this I've done this in person previously, and we've broken up in a group and we're doing charades. It's a good time. Since we were all on video, I thought that this would be a great way to showcase your ability to display emotion. So over the next few slides, I'm going to show you an emotion. I want everyone on their video to give their best version and hold that best version of that emotion. And it can be acting out, however you want to do it. I want you to kind of display that emotion as best you can on the video. Sherry's going to judge. Well, I mean, we're all going to judge each other for sure, but just humor me. This will be funny if you're taking screenshots, because this is definitely a Zoom fail waiting to happen, okay? All right, first one, very easy. Everyone show me happy. Hold it, I'm gonna click through these. Show me happy. Mm-hmm. There we go. Hey, like this. Ben's laying down. If he's not happy, I don't know what's going on. All right, we're gonna get a little more difficult. Show me frustrated. Oh, come on, I need some intensity here.
Grant's doing a good job over there. Grant's doing a good job over there.
Show me frustrated. Okay. Evan looks like he's gonna close out. All right. Show me afraid. No one has any fear anymore, right? Show me, Matthew. Looks like, all right. So we have afraid. Show me heartbroken. This is a good one. Show me heartbroken. Yes. Mike Rowe, there we go. We have a little Justin Bieber sing along, you know, hand action going. Yeah. Heartbroken. All right. Show me embarrassed. How do you display embarrassed in the world? How would you show embarrassed? Do you become embarrassed?
Nick Rose doing a good job again. He's hiding his face. Nick Rose doing a good job again. He's hiding his face.
Show me furious. Please don't destroy any of your own personal belongings. Show me furious. Fists of fury. Right? Excited. That's a pretty easy one, right? Oh, jazz hands, right? that's how we show that. Fist pumping. Sad's pretty easy, right? We can kind of tell when someone's sad. Nervous. There we go. LeBron James, right? Chewing on your fingernails. Angry. That's an easy one. We can generally tell when someone's angry. Everyone show me fine. Yeah. Now, in your head, I also want you to, when I say fine, I want you to think quickly, did you see that as a positive or a negative emotion? Right? How many of you, when I said, show me fine, that was a positive thing? You were expressing a positive emotion. Raise your hand for positive. Okay? Raise your hand if you thought that that was an expression of a negative emotion. This is why this is difficult. If you're looking around, right, it's not there's no consensus. On its surface, fine should be a neutral to positive emotional reaction. I'm fine. If someone was fine, you would see that as a positive thing. But we've actually turned that word into, I would say, a fairly negative emotion. If you've ever asked your significant other how they're doing, and they've said, I'm fine, you know that is incorrect. You know that you need to go back to the drawing board and try again because you've done something wrong, right? And that's what makes all of this so complex and so difficult, is that oftentimes we're trying to guess, and I think about all of those, right? Heartbroken, frustrated. When you mislabel an emotion, it can have very, it can have negative consequences to your relationship management. If you've ever asked somebody how they're feeling, or you've labeled them as such, oh, you look frustrated, and they're not frustrated, they're immediately like, do you understand who I am as a human being, right? They take it to that level. But there's an emotional kind of lapse if you aren't on the same page. So safer questions are, you know, how are you doing? Can you share how you're feeling right now, right? As opposed to assigning emotions, because we're often really horrible at this, okay? So as I said, this is why it's so hard. 27 emotions every hour, right? So just managing your own emotions can be very difficult because it's a roller coaster every hour. And you have to constantly be checking in with yourself of how you're doing, what do you need to be able to cope with and manage that emotion. If you're feeling anxious, how do you cope with that? If you're feeling frustrated, how do you cope with that? And you can experience all these in an hour, and it's exhausting, right? You can spend your entire day managing your own emotions. What can you do? Begin to recognize and listen to your internal cues. The easiest one to kind of do this for is anger, right? So how many of you are in tune with what happens to your body when you become angry, right? How many of you gnash your teeth, clench your jaw, clench your fist, curl your toes? You know, some of us are, you know, our knees kind of jitter, right? We have to get up. There are often very subliminal cues that we can learn to kind of tap into right before we get to full-blown anger. And once we start to understand what those internal cues are, if you're a teeth clencher and you start to, or you know, start to clench your jaw, you start to feel that coming on when you're in a meeting, you're in a group setting, that's a place where you need to kind of create that stop and then, you know, have an intervention, right? Staying with the anger, we all find ways to burn off that extra energy, right? When we're angry, some of us run, some of us listen to music, read, meditate, you know, a lot of different things, right? So those are on the adaptive side. I've talked about the maladaptive, yelling, screaming, taking it out, blaming others, all of those now maladaptive things. So you have to know what your internal cues are, and then when you get to that emotion, how do you manage it, right? And if you're managing it productively, good for you. If you're not, right, you got to start learning about when that cue is and how do I kind of block that and do something. Okay. From a work perspective, I like the focusing on intentional choices, and I'll share. You know, my work world is a little chaotic right now. Is, you know, your world is very chaotic right now, and we stress this all the time. It's about making intentional choices and not allowing our emotions to hijack our decision-making abilities. I think if you're talking about just what you're going through right now and what we're all experiencing right now, that is an extremely important thing. It'll serve you not only now, but for future, is that making decisions based on your intentional choices of how you're feeling and what you want to do as a reaction of that emotion, right? And not letting it hijack your decision-making abilities and saying, I'm going to do this because I'm frustrated or anxious or angry or whatever, or even happy, right? Going too far. The hilarious one, I think, on the happy side says like, oh, well, if you have a positive emotion, like it's okay to kind of go overboard and let it hijack your emotions. But think about all the movies or scenes or movies where you have where someone's been on a first date. I think about Raj Kudapali from Big Bang Theory, right? When he says like, when he's like, you know, someone's, you know, a female actress says hello to him and he's already planning the wedding. And he'll say like, well, or, you know, say it like, oh, hello, how are you? It's nice to meet you. I love you. You know, those are kind of emotional overreactions on the positive end that can also be harmful to our relationship management. Okay? Good. Okay, I think we're good on time. We're working through. We get to social competence. As I mentioned, you guys have a lot of experiences with this in group projects. You've seen it in, I mean, group dynamics. That's the entirety of reality television. Let's put 7 people with differing personal traits into a into a setting and let's see what happens. And what happens is usually you have a lot of clashes because people don't have some of these social competence skills, right? Ability to observe, ability to empathize with other people, ability to listen without judgment. These are all skills that you have to start to tune into and be able to do, to be socially successful. I think in my work world, right, and I would say I suffer from this. I'm a fixer by nature. I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer by nature. Initially, when someone comes to me with a problem or an issue, my immediate reaction is to try and fix it, to try and solve the problem. When sometimes I need to just listen without judgment. I just need to hear what they're doing, how they're feeling, and be able to empathize with that. I would tell you that my wife feels that this is a core skill that I could certainly be better at. That I don't always need to fix the problem. I just need to be able to be a good listener and manage the relationship that way. Okay? So think about yourself and where are the social situations where you have struggles or maybe you aren't as successful as you'd like to be. They said, here's the 2 scenarios that I think about and think about your reaction to it, right? I kind of mentioned the first one. You see a student crying in the hallway. How many of us would let that social anxiety or our negative emotional reactions get in the way of providing support or providing help? It's a difficult situation to overcome, but people who are emotionally intelligent understand the need and value for providing support and being a caring person to another. Think about a friend who has informed you their significant other's broken up with them. What's your immediate reaction? Are you the person that kind of attacks and tells that, well, you can do better, you can, blah, 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 because that's what you think is the supportive way. And then 2 weeks later, they're back together. And then you're like, said a lot of nasty things, right? So think about those situations. What's your gut reaction to do? Are you someone who tries to, on the other end, the friend is informing you that, and that's a difficult thing. And you're trying to positively pump them up and trying to kind of go all sunshine on them, and that's not what they need either, right? But meeting that person where they are, understanding what they need from you to be supportive, and that's kind of using your emotional intelligence well. What you can do, as I said, almost done, right? So I will, once again, I would share at my core, I'm a talker. So listening to hear and understand and not to respond is something that I have to work on pretty consistently in my work world. And I would say that we're often hardwired to do that at this point. We're always, instead of listening and hearing the other person and understanding where they're coming from, we're simply waiting for them to take a breath so that we can respond with our story or our anecdote or our advice or our view on things, and instead of just truly being good listeners. If you're going to take one note, this Thomas Gordon's 12 communication roadblocks, research it, it's online. Just from a communication perspective, these are, I think, really great things to kind of understand. Do I do these things? And if I do them, how are they negatively impacting my relationships and my ability to lead and get along with other people, and collaborate with other people? It's often put in I've used it previously to talk about parenting skills, right? Think about parenting styles, right? Ordering, threatening, preaching, advising, lecturing. These are all parenting kind of skills that we learn to use, but they can all be detrimental in some ways. So I think if you can get a handle on which of these are struggle for you and what's your go-to or what's your maybe 2 or 3 top that you do that really block communication from others, it'd be really helpful. Okay. As I said, that's all I have from a content perspective. Like I said, you're on here. There's 44 of you on here. I certainly appreciate your time. it's about getting ahead of this, because it is a core trait. And if you learn and you read the research of, you look at the top 100 CEOs in America, all of them score off the charts, or much higher, 10 to 20% higher than their counterparts at other firms, at other businesses. If your desire is to lead and manage other people, getting good at this is a great way to not only advance your own career, but to be a productive manager. You want to be good to your employees. You want to be good to the other people you work with. And emotional intelligence is a foundational skill to be able to do that effectively. So I'll stop. I'll shut up. If anyone wants to unmute, if you have a question, you can either, I can check the chat. So someone asked, how do we figure out our EI rating? So there are some online tools. I would caution you, right? So just do your math. Some of them are free and can give you at least a sense. If you are looking for kind of what I would say is not the end all be all, but there's I believe it's Talent Smart. Let me just pull that up. Because I'll give you a book. It comes with a So Emotional Intelligence 2.0. This actually comes with an assessment that you can take. Travis Bradbury and Gene Greaves are basically the two, they're the experts in this. And so, this is a book I would highly recommend. Like I said, it comes with a full report, really well broken down, gives you a lot of insight and information. And then Patrick Lancioni has done a lot of team development stuff. So he writes the forward of this. Like I said, at $17, it's well worth the investment if you're looking at that. Yeah. So what's a good score? It'll tell you. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's over over 65, and there are some different components of that. But it'll tell you this test actually gives you kind of a good hey, here's a place where it looks like you lag in one of the 4 components. So, other questions? Like I said, so Evan asked the best ways to improve. I mean, I think it starts with that self-awareness, right? I think a lot of us wander through life just kind of allowing the world to come at us and not being intentional. So I think the more that you can practice, and it does come down to practice, and I put it on that slide, right? So practicing, do I understand how I'm feeling? Do I understand the impact that how I'm feeling is having on my behavior? If I'm upset, is that causing me to be less productive? Is it causing me to be short with other people? Is it causing me to do that? And how can I hijack, right, and get back in charge of my emotions? So the best way I've heard this explained, right? If we talk about some ways to learn how to better manage, right? I also use an app called Headspace. Now, there's a free version. There's also a paid version. Headspace is a meditation app, but the guy on Headspace, he talks about emotions and managing your own emotions effectively. I think one of the ways that he explains it is talk about basically standing on the side of the highway and looking at cars going back and forth, right? And those cars represent the emotions we feel in a given time, in a given hour, in a given, anger might come, happiness might come, anxiety, fear, all these things are zooming past and through us. We have 2 options. We can either watch that emotion, right? Monitor that emotion go by, right? And acknowledge and understand that and live through that, right? and be productive, or we can choose to step out in front of it and try to stop it. And if you step out in front of a car, you get run over, right? So those situations where we try to step out in front of it, where we're talking about suppression or chasing after or staying in an emotion, right? Allowing an emotion to kind of take hold of you and dictate your decisions. That's stepping out in front of that car. And that's not effective. So, improving, I would say, if you can find stuff, learning how to meditate, learning how to understand your emotions quickly. Like I said, for me, I'm a knee bouncer, so I know that if my knees start bouncing uncontrollably, I'm having a nervous or anxious moment, and I need to figure out how to kind of productively work through that. I need to ask questions. I need to check in with other people. From the social part of it, this is a Band-Aid you have to rip off with people. The best way is to find an accountability partner. Someone who in your life who is willing to provide you with feedback and willing to tell you when you're doing well and not well. Was just a couple weeks ago with one of my friends from high school, and when we were together, we're joking about all the crap that we give each other sometimes, and his wife said, "I don't understand how you guys are still friends with all the nonsense that you provide to each other." And I said, to be honest, John's the person who would hold me accountable, and I held John accountable when he was not nice or was not doing things in a productive way, or so we had that accountability for each other, and I think that was productive. Let me know when I was being a jerk to someone else, or maybe not tuned into somebody else's emotions and how they were feeling. So find yourself someone who can be honest with you. And I think that's a very effective teaching tool for helping with the social part of it. Books, I would recommend this book among, there are a couple other by Bradbury that talk about that, that he's written as well. Like I said, he's one of the foremost authors on it. HBR, you usually get 3 free Harvard Business Review articles. They have a pretty great library of emotional intelligence articles and web series that I would absolutely encourage. We encourage our employees to look at, as well, as far as how that employs in the business world and the advantage you have if you do this well. Any final questions? You all good? Like I said, it's certainly thank you very much for being on. Stay safe. I know this, I was talking with one of my counselor ed friends the other day, and she said, talking about being in Zoom calls and things like that. And it's a scary time for students. It's a scary time for you and trying to figure all this out. But, just make sure you're staying safe. This emotional intelligence stuff, as I said, making sure you're checking in with yourself. And if you find moments where you're not so positive, you're not in a good spot, reaching out and connecting with others. Zoom has been a wonderful tool for not only learning, but for social stuff. And so making sure that you stay connected with other people, I think, is extremely important at this point. Yeah. Effective negatively to technology and social media. Technology. I think sometimes people have used it as a crutch to be less aware, right? It's an ability to tune others out. It's an ability, if you're just interacting via text message, right? There's certainly an emotional aspect of that is lost on how people feel. Like emojis are essentially a reaction to trying to insert emotions back to language and what we've missed on personal face-to-face interactions. I think I would say the most negative is it has given people the ability to, I would say, hide behind their emotion, right? So instead of having a difficult conversation with someone face-to-face, some people have taken the easy way out and used it as an email or as a message or as something like that. And I think that has negatively impacted some folks. In some ways, maybe that has allowed people that don't have that aren't as able to engage in that. It's given them an out to maybe be more productive. But I think in general, that has been a negative. I think in some ways, just think about the connectivity, right? So think about where we are right now. Technology has provided us the ability to stay connected in this weird time, and have these face-to-face interactions and be able to share emotions, and it's kept families engaged. So, it has provided some challenges that I think we continue to work through, but all in all, I think it has allowed us, if we choose to, right, goes back to that intention, to be more connected. It has certainly allowed us to do that in a meaningful way. All right. That's all I've got. Enjoy, guys. Like I said, my name is Jeremy Fegert, and my email is just jeremy.fegert, F-E-G-E-R-T. And I'll put it actually in the email or in the chat. But if you got questions or want to talk about anything, let me know.